Further debate? I recognize the member from Beaches East York.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Oh, I hope you'll be clapping at the end as well. First, it is always a pleasure and an honor to rise in this gorgeous chamber with all of you, actually, to represent beautiful Beaches East Yorkers. And I'll be sharing my time with my firecracker colleague, who represents all of Scarborough, actually, but is the member for Scarborough-Guildwood. So today feels like a Freaky Friday, actually. I'm brought back to City Council in 2013 when this expansion of the Billy Bishop Island Airport was, the proposal was tabled and it was debated at length and forever. And it was rejected by members of Toronto City Council and eventually the federal government and thousands of Toronto residents. And I pledged to serve all of Ontario. Actually, all of us have done that, and that is why we ran, and we were elected as members of provincial parliament, not municipal, not federal, provincial. Yet this government, led blindly by this premier, is chasing his glory days back on City Council in Toronto. Unsurprisingly, Bill 110 was introduced the day that the government adjourned the House for a week, leaving no time for debate, no time to object, just the usual surprise bill just before we rise. Perhaps they thought that the week back in our constituencies would mean that this would all blow over by the time we were able to return. Instead, what it did was give people time to mobilize, and boy, did they. I've heard from hundreds of constituents who have all had different connections to the Toronto waterfront, not just Beaches East Yorkers, but beyond. And the resounding story, however, was that this waterfront is an oasis in the city, and they are against a Billy Bishop Airport expansion. And I am sure that the government side has heard the same. This government is throwing around words like modernization and unlocking potential, but do you know what else this government claims is necessary action in the name of safety, modernization, unlocking potential, streamlining for the good of Ontario? Well, that would be shielding members of this government from disclosing records, donating skills development fund money to a strip club, killing green development standards, helping Barrie annex land from Springwater and Oro-Medonte, removing bike lanes, unilaterally appointing heads of councils in municipalities across Ontario and giving them strong powers, axing protections for endangered species, creating special economic, or as they have rightfully been dubbed, lawless zones. It is not progress to pollute the air and water, dole out millions of dollars unnecessarily, bulldoze communities, parks, schools, all to benefit a select few business class in and around Toronto. Ontario has not forgotten about this premier's snazzy new bougie private jet. The premier justified his purchase with claims that it is necessary for business to travel around North America quickly. Conveniently, Billy Bishop primarily serves corporate customers. It is advertised as a hub for business to jet in and out of the province. Its role will disproportionately benefit a select few people who frequently travel for work, maybe even the premier. It's very, very interesting coincidental timing that the premier purchases this snazzy bougie jet at the same time, at the exact same time, he proposes an expansion of the Billy Bishop Island Airport. You did that. You connect the dots on that one. And let's talk about the disruption to the community. Little Norway Park, I actually just asked the Premier a question on this very significant park this week. He did not seem to be aware that the other park, as he referred to it, is not just a park. Little Norway Park is a wonderful gem of green space equipped with amenities for baseball, soccer, and swimming like most parks, but also it is a historical landmark. This park marks the Royal Norwegian Air Training Base, where Norwegian pilots would train to then rejoin Allied efforts to defeat Nazi Germany in World War II. It commemorates the thousands of heroic people who contributed to and sacrificed their lives in the fight against Nazi Germany. They fought for our freedom. So I know many of your ridings have legions, they have cenotaphs, they have war memorials. Can you imagine someone proposing to pave over those and how you would feel about that? Think about how the Norwegians in Ontario feel about that. It is a site where King Olav V and the Crown Prince and Princess of Norway have attended ceremonies, and it is a spot where Norwegians to this day continue to host cultural events, including this Friday when they'll be there. What this government cannot seem to understand when it comes to green space, or really any land that their developer friends deem as prime for bulldozing, is that communities, economies, strong nations are not built by simply slapping in some million-dollar condos, or in this case, dropping in a massive airport in the middle of a tight cluster of community that includes schools, parks, several parks actually, memorial sites, housing in downtown Toronto. What I would say is probably one of the busiest, it's the busiest area in downtown Toronto, definitely busiest intersection, which if it's the busiest area in downtown Toronto, it's the busiest area in Canada. Communities need schools, they need parks to gather, they need homes that are safe and affordable, they need grocery stores that are priced appropriately, they need air to breathe that is clean, and they need a government they can trust. Currently, this government is not delivering any of these. Not a one. This government does not have a Billy Bishop Airport expansion plan. They have not thought this through. They haven't considered all of the scenarios, and they do not know the extent of its impact. Let me tell you a little bit about the infrastructure for Billy Bishop. Bill 110 is riddled with regulation this and regulation that. Want to know who is exempt from the Act? They will be set in regulations that are forthcoming. Stay tuned. Curious about compensation? This will be set in regulations that are forthcoming. Stay tuned. Looking for hard dates? They will be set in regulations that are forthcoming. Stay tuned. How will issues that may arise from the Act be dealt with? This will be set in regulations that are forthcoming. Stay tuned. It's a nail-biter. This government has no set regulations. They have barely provided us with an updated proposal of what the Billy Bishop Airport expansion may entail. Does this all sound vague and hypothetical? Well, that's because it is, actually. This is not a plan, and there's no concrete evidence to justify making this dream a reality. So when the government asks us to vote, when they ask the public to trust them, they're requiring blind belief. Here are the details the government does not give you. Let's talk about the hypocritical Toronto focus. This government never misses a chance to criticize another member in this chamber for focusing on Toronto. Toronto's not the center of the universe, you have said over and over again. 1 minute you're bashing Toronto, and now you're loving it. At least the waterfront, you're loving. In fact, yesterday I was in committee, and I was so shocked I nearly keeled over off my chair that the member from Brampton East I actually thought he was moonlighting as a Tourism Toronto representative, the way he was raving about Toronto and downtown and its waterfront and this airport. I just really had to check that I was in the right room with the right people. And I agree, MPPs are here to create and debate legislation in the best interest of all of Ontario, and frankly, I would love to get back to that, but this government will not let us. All I'm seeing from this bill is hypocrisy. This is a bill about Toronto's waterfront, to bring in business to Toronto, to bring jobs to Toronto, but who will be paying for it? Taxpayers all over Ontario. Some taxpayers who perhaps may not even ever use Billy Bishop Airport. And we have airports all over Ontario, in some of your own ridings. And I actually feel like taking a tour out to all the airports in Ontario. I will not take a bougie private snazzy jet that the Premier just purchased, but I would like to see those airports and see what kind of state of repair or disrepair they are in. And I'm wondering, where are their investments? Don't you feel a little robbed that, yet again, it's all about Toronto, downtown Toronto, and the investment, the money's going into downtown Toronto, Billy Bishop Airport, not yours. This government claims that this expansion is necessary to bring in competition to our aviation sector and bring down costs. Well, a few things that would have helped with that is to retain the flight schools that were at Billy Bishop that are no longer because the costs are way too prohibitive. But even then, how does the business case have legs to stand on, especially when Lester B. Pearson Airport already has plans and capital to expand their capacity and are doing so right now? And you know what? I don't know if you've talked to them, but they're pretty peeved about this new focus on Billy Bishop. Those in favour of the Billy Bishop expansion claim that it will be a major economic driver, bringing in $8.5 billion. This figure is almost half of what Pearson grosses at $19.6 billion, and that is with a share of 95% of all air travel. How will Billy Bishop, a fraction of the size, the smallest airport, one of the smallest airports, if not the smallest airport, offering a fraction of the flights, even with an expansion, produce this much? Beyond these figures, simply nothing adds up. It is not a nonsensical option. In Pearson's airport plans, the expansion is mapped onto already empty acreage, not land that literally needs to be built like Billy Bishop Airport. Time and money has been rightfully invested in transit to and from Lester B. Pearson already. The Up Express, easy to get to, easy to ride, gets you there stress-free. Personally, from beautiful beaches at East York, I hop on the TTC, and I take it straight across and grab the bus. Easy peasy for basically $3. The Up Express is under 30 minutes from Union to the heart of the city. No traffic, no waiting on the highway to get in and out of the city. That is pure convenience. And if someone cannot bear a less than 30-minute express train, then they certainly cannot handle the unavoidable congestion to get in and out of Billy Bishop Airport. I'm sure you've seen it. That Bathurst, Queens Quay, Erin Quay intersection is a bottleneck. That would be a compliment, the bottleneck. No matter which way you split it, Billy Bishop is not a congestion solution. It is a congestion problem. And adding a couple million passengers to that traffic will not help matters. It will be a nightmare. Connecting Ontario, what will help is expanding transit options equitably around the province, varying in both mode and area. When we think about transit as the provincial government, we ought to be thinking beyond Toronto. We need to think about how we can connect our whole province. The Montreal-Ottawa high-speed rail is an excellent start. This is a commuter option that connects two major hubs, cuts out traffic completely, and limits greenhouse gas emissions. This is the transit we need, long overdue. Ontario has tons of airports. Hamilton Airport, North Bay Jack Garland Airport, Sarnia Chris Hadfield Airport. There you go. These all need investment, more or continued investment. Not to mention the 29 northern remote airports that the Ministry of Transportation operates that need runway extensions, updated navigational aids, safer waiting facilities, and other options for travel like all-weather roads. And we heard that from our colleague the other day. Ontario has over 25 fly-in communities. There should be no question when it comes to prioritizing this infrastructure. This government cannot skirt their duty to consult. They need to speak with and listen to First Nations to ensure that they fill these major gaps. The details of Billy Bishop plan. The runway. First, the expansion is far beyond what is presented. Billy Bishop Airport would demand 900 meters of new land mass, a 600-meter runway, and 150 buffer zone on each end. Unfortunately, this extra 900 meters does not even scratch the surface of waterfront disruption. The Billy Bishop Airport expansion would need hundreds of more meters of buoys and guide lights extended into the water, repair hangars, new customs facilities, if flight paths are added, exclusionary zones, and more. Before I get into all the infrastructure, let's just take a minute to touch on a pretty fundamental piece of infrastructure in any airport, the tarmac. Don't know if any of you have thought about this. The jets used at Billy Bishop Airport were never meant to be there. The tarmac, which is asphalt topped on sand, gets too hot in the summer. And these Q400 jets sink into the heat. We know also with the climate emergency upon us how much hotter our summers are getting. Last year, the record was we hit records, and we know that there's been scientific modeling that Southern Ontario will have a heat dome effect at some point in the future. So with hotter summers, this is not a good idea. Consequently, they cannot be stored at Billy Bishop Airport in the summer. Can you believe that? Did you know that? And instead, they reside in London. So right off the bat, this airport cannot even house its critical equipment. We have all seen the heavy layer of fog that can fall over Toronto, sometimes thick enough that all of you can see on the road in front of you are car or bike headlights. Toronto's Billy Bishop Airport, especially being on the waterfront, is susceptible to fog, low visibility, and delays. So these lights are non-negotiable. And I think many of you who fly in and out of Billy Bishop, which is great that you can do that, you have had your flights canceled. You have had your flights postponed, rescheduled due to fog. It is one of the foggiest areas for airports in the country. And so the list goes on. We're talking about the weather at the island airport. We're talking about, we haven't even got into the bird strikes, which were mentioned this morning by my colleague from Spadina, Fort York, the environmental disruption with aquatic life, the underwater berm that will need to be built to support a massive new runway expansion, and the absolutely ludicrous idea of trying to shoehorn in a massive airport into one of the tightest, most congested downtown urban spaces in the country. So if you haven't been down there, but I feel many of you have, because you've flown out of there, but for those who have not, I would urge you to go down and have a tour and see the nightmare of the traffic already. And so when I was on City Council, I said, opposite of what the Premier said to me the other day, I did not want to destroy the Billy Bishop Airport and turn it into a park. It is sufficient the way it is. Let it operate as is, on the current footprint, as is. I'm not proposing that anyone here pull a Mayor Daley of Chicago, send transportation services out in the dark of the night, and carve X's in the runway, and render that airport obsolete, which is what happened in Chicago, which the Premier is well aware and well familiar with Chicago. That's what happened. They have a glorious, glorious waterfront. You have to admit that. But I'm not saying that. I'm saying keep it as is. Keep investing in transit to an existing airport that you are now expanding, Lester B. Pearson. That is the logical, practical, economical, smart thing to do. But I don't know what is going on. I've said this to you guys before. You are obsessed. You continually destroy things that are working well instead of fixing the things that are broken. Imagine if you just focused on fixing things that are broken instead of meddling continually in municipal affairs, especially Toronto, especially the Premier having this obsession, and now you guys have the obsession, obviously.
I'll remind the member to address the Speaker.
With the Toronto waterfront. There was the Ferris wheel. There was concern about waterfront Toronto. I think that's settled down now. The Island Airport, the Convention Centre, Ontario Place. It's all about Toronto waterfront. Thanks for the attention, but I'd rather you put that attention into hospitals, like Michael Guerin, who's been waiting for you to sign off for 3 years on their phase 2 of their renovation. And they are double the capacity that their ER department can handle, but they're doing it because they're amazing people, but it's not going to last forever. So focus on fixing your hospitals, fixing health care, fixing the air quality, improving your schools, dealing with the autism wait list, reversing your idiotic decision for OSAP, and focus on things that are working. Never mind the Great Lakes. We don't, we are so blessed in Ontario to have access and to have these 5 Great Lakes, and many of your ridings border those Great Lakes, and you're going to mess with that with this airport? I don't think so. And so the other last factor is housing. It's all about housing starts with you. And you're trying to...
I will once again remind the member to please address the Speaker.
This government is keen on building housing, supposedly. But there are so many housing proposals proposed for the Portlands. 19 to 49 stories proposals. And now, with this idiotic idea of expanding the Billy Bishop Airport, that renders that housing, it just shaves it all down, cuts it, caps it at 15 stories. So it's not true that you care about housing. Because any chance you have to build, the government has to build, you do not. You have a prime opportunity here. Billions and billions of dollars have been spent to flood protect the area of the Portlands. All three levels of government, a rock-solid tripartite agreement that has been left that way and not being meddled with. And now you're going to wreck all the housing proposals for that area? So the math is not going to work. The logic is not there. You have the government has, we all have an existing airport at Lester B. Pearson. The taxpayers of Ontario should not be on the hook to expand an island airport in Toronto's downtown waterfront for the Premier's new snazzy jet plane.